The thing about being kidnapped is that it happens faster than you'd think. One moment I'm standing outside Callaway's, waiting for my car, rain barely misting against my collar. The next, a hood goes over my head. Something hard connects with the back of my knee, and I'm folding into the floor of a vehicle that smells like fast food wrappers and old fear. The door slams. The engine accelerates. And I think, very clearly, in the particular calm that only comes from having already survived the worst thing that will ever happen to you. Oh, this again. Not kidnapping specifically, that's new. But the flavor of it. The sudden violence. The presumption that I can be moved against my will. That I belong to the ordinary world where such maneuvers have predictable outcomes. That flavor I know. That flavor has been following me since the night I walked into a Victorian townhouse in Edinburgh and shook hands with something wearing the face of a beautiful man named Silas Vance. For years of marriage to a 640-year-old vampire will calibrate your fear response in interesting ways. I don't fight the restraints. Plastic zip ties, rushed, and a little loose around my left wrist. The knot is sitting on the tendon, which means they tied me in a hurry, which means this wasn't entirely clean. Someone miscalculated something. I filed that away. I count the turns the van makes. Left, long straight. Right, another long straight. We're heading east and slightly north. Industrial district, probably, if they have any sense. Places with wide buildings and indifferent neighbors. My name is Julian Shaw. I am 31 years old. I have green eyes and the kind of face that people call pretty before they apologize for it. I am, depending on who you ask, either the luckiest or the most damned man alive. I was a doctoral candidate in folklore and mythology before a set of circumstances too complicated to explain made my academic interest in the supernatural somewhat more personal than intended. I have been married for 4 years. My husband has been alive for approximately 640 of them. His name is Silas Vance. And if any of the men in this van knew that, if any of them had heard that name in the right context, spoken by the right person, with the appropriate weight of lived experience behind it, they would pull over right now. They would cut my restraints. They would say, "I'm so sorry. Sir, please don't tell him." They don't know. That's the thing. That's the whole thing. They grab me because I am what I appear to be, a well-dressed man leaving an expensive restaurant, someone who obviously has access to money. They did the math of my coat and my shoes and my watch. The watch, Christ. I keep telling Silas that wearing a Patek Philippe while walking around the mortal world is asking for this kind of attention. But he looks at me with those silver eyes and says, "I want people to see you well kept." And I lose the argument every time. They thought ransom, a clean transaction, a wealthy spouse, reasonable terror, reasonable payout, everyone goes home. They're going to be so surprised. I don't say this with satisfaction. I want to be clear about that. I am genuinely, quietly sorry for what is about to happen to these men, because they made a bad gamble without understanding the odds. And the particular cruelty of ignorance is that it doesn't protect you from consequences. They chose the wrong mark, not because they're stupid, but because there is no intelligence network in the world that could have prepared them for the correct information. You can't Google what Silas is. The internet doesn't have a category for it. The folklore I spent 6 years studying gets pieces of it right, and most of it catastrophically wrong. And I have a doctorate. The van stops. Doors open. I'm pulled out by my arms, walked across gravel, through a door that squeaks on its hinges. Inside, the smell of concrete and damp and something chemical. A warehouse, then, or something like it. They walk me a long way before they stop and zip-tie my wrists to something cold and fixed, a pipe, probably, against a wall. The hood comes off. The room is lit by 2 bare bulbs hanging from exposed wiring. There are 4 men that I can count, and 1 more somewhere. I heard a 5th voice when they loaded me into the van. The 4 in front of me are arranging themselves in the way that people do when they want to look in control. spread out, arms loose, faces arranged into expressions of threat. I look at them and think, okay, so that's who you are. My phone is gone. I noticed its absence before the hood came off. They took it when I was still folded on the van floor. Careful enough to disable a GPS trace. Smart enough to know that modern kidnapping requires technological literacy. Good. That means Silas doesn't know yet. That means there's a window, hours, maybe more, before the particular radar that my husband runs on every conscious moment of his impossible existence registers that I haven't come home. And the longer that window holds, the more of these men will still be breathing when this ends. I catch myself on that last thought and file it away too. The parts of me that have changed in proximity to him. The largest one steps forward. He has the build of someone who used to be athletic and the face of someone who's made a series of increasingly bad decisions. You know why you're here, he says. It isn't a question. I have a reasonable hypothesis, I say. He doesn't like my tone. People often don't at first. We're going to make a call. You're going to behave. He checks a notepad, which is charming. Your husband is going to wire us $2 million by morning, and then you're going to go home. Simple. Simple, I agree. He studies me. He expected different. He expected crying, maybe, or bargaining, or at least a visible pulse of fear. He's getting a man who is sitting with his back against a damp pipe and his bound hands in his lap, and his eyes moving steadily around the room. You're not scared? He says. I consider my answer carefully. The true answer is layered and strange and would require more context than any of us has time for. So I give him the simplest version of it. I'm scared of very specific things, I say. You're not one of them. He decides this is bravado and moves on. Fine. Let him. I turn my attention to the details of the room, the exits, the structural supports, the way the light pools, and the way the shadows pool differently. Old habits. Silas spent the first year of our relationship teaching me to read ruins the way he reads them, which is to say, as potential battlefields. I thought it was paranoia then. I think it's love now. Somewhere across the city, in a townhouse that doesn't quite exist on any municipal record, my husband is sitting in his chair by the window, and he doesn't know yet. I give it 6 hours. Maybe 5. I settle in and I wait. And I think, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what's coming. I tried to warn you, even though you can't hear me yet. Above the warehouse, the rain picks up. The bulbs flicker once, steadying. One of you, at least, should have Googled the name on my emergency contact. The leader's name is Marcus. I learned this because the nervous one says it without thinking, the way people always reveal things when they're trying to appear more put together than they are. He's halfway through a sentence meant to sound commanding. Marcus said we don't move him until... And then he stops, face going a little red, like the name is classified information he's just leaked. I file it. Marcus. The nervous one is Danny. Young, 23 at most, with the particular energy of someone who followed someone else into something and is only now beginning to understand the full shape of it. He keeps glancing at the door. There's a cruel one, built with a jaw like a shelf and eyes that move over me in a way I don't care for. He hasn't spoken yet, but his body speaks plenty. And the quiet one, the watcher. He's been positioned near the secondary exit since they brought me in, and he hasn't moved, and he hasn't spoken, and he tracks me with an attention that's more intelligent than the others. 5 men. I've confirmed 5. The 5th is somewhere beyond the thin wall to my left. I can hear him moving, the specific shuffle of someone trying to be quieter than they are. I'll learn his name later. Marcus makes the call at 11:47 p.m. I know the time because there's a clock on the opposite wall. Cheap plastic, the kind you can buy at any corner shop. And I've been watching it with the focused calm of a man who has nothing to do but think. They use a burner phone. Smart. They've written my husband's number on the notepad, lifted from my phone before they disabled it, I assume. And the idea of one of these men scrolling through my contacts, finding S, deciding that's the right one to call, landing on the number I've had memorized for 4 years without ever needing to look it up. That almost makes me smile. That's what he saved as. Not a name, just the initial. I gave him a whole alphabet, and he took one letter and kept it like a secret. Even in my own phone. Marcus puts the call on speaker. The room consolidates. Danny moves closer, the cruel one. I've started thinking of him as Cole, which turns out to be correct. Crosses his arms and watches me with undisguised calculation. The quiet watcher stays at the door, but adjusts his angle so he can see my face. They all want to watch my face when my husband picks up. They think the dynamic will tell them something. They're right, but not in the way they expect. The phone rings once. That's it. Just once. One ring. And then the line opens, and the silence on the other end is not the silence of someone fumbling for a phone, not the silence of sleep disrupted, not the ordinary human silence of a person being interrupted. It is the silence of something that was already awake, already waiting, already knowing. It lifts the hair on my arms. And I've been living with this man for 4 years. Marcus clears his throat. He has a script. I can see it, literal paper held at his side. Glanced at with the specific anxiety of someone who prepared and is now terrified of the preparation failing him. We have your. Is he breathing? Silas's voice over a phone speaker is worse than his voice in a room. Something about the compression, the reduction of it to frequencies that a device can transmit. It removes the softness and leaves only the structure underneath. And the structure underneath my husband's voice is not a human thing. It is very old and very cold, and it does not ask questions the way questions are normally asked, as requests for information. It asks questions the way architects check load-bearing walls. Marcus's hand tightens on the phone. Is he breathing? Yes. The word comes out smaller than Marcus intended. He's breathing. He's fine. We don't want to hurt him, we just. The silence that follows lasts 4 seconds. I count them. For seconds. I watch Marcus's face move through confusion, through something approaching understanding, through the anteroom of dread. I've heard Silas do this before. Not often. The version of my husband that I know, that I sleep beside, that I argue with about the thermostat, because he runs cold and I don't, that I catch watching me read with an expression on his face that I have no adequate word for. That version controls himself carefully, consistently. It took me a long time to understand that the control itself was the love letter. That a thing that old, that powerful, choosing again and again to be gentle. But in these 4 seconds, Silas is not being gentle. Listen to me, Silas says. And his voice, God, his voice. Danny takes a step back without seeming to notice he's doing it. I'm going to transfer you whatever amount you require. Name it. Marcus blinks. This isn't the script. The script had more back and forth built in. 2 million. Fine. Account number. Marcus recites it. His voice shakes on the last 4 digits. He meets my eyes across the room, and I watch him make a mistake that a lot of people make. He decides the quick agreement means weakness. He decides a man who pays that fast must be panicking, must be soft, must be someone he can push. We'll confirm when it clears, Marcus says, finding something like steadiness, and then you'll get him back safe. But if you contact the police, if we see any kind of Marcus. The room goes very still. Marcus's name has not been used. I didn't use it. The burner phone has been active for 40 seconds. There is no way. There is no logical, human way. I know where you are. Silas's voice is simply, conversationally, the way you'd say the coffee's on the left, or don't forget your umbrella. I knew where you were before you made this call. The money will clear in approximately 4 minutes. But I want you to understand something, Marcus. Whatever you do to him between now and when I arrive, I will remember it. The line closes. Marcus stands with the phone at his side for a long moment. Then he looks at me. His face has the specific blankness of a man trying to process something his framework doesn't have a slot for. Who is that? He says. I think about the first time I heard Silas's voice across a room. The way it rearranged something in my chest, the way I thought, before I understood anything, before I knew what I was walking toward. Whatever that is, it's the most alive-sounding thing I've ever heard. And then I thought, much later, when I knew better, that's because it's had so long to practice. My husband, I say. Who is he? I look at Marcus, this man who made a bad calculation, this man who chose the wrong coat and the wrong watch and the wrong initial from my contact list, and I feel, genuinely, the heavy sadness of what's coming. Something you should have researched before you pick me up. I say, I'm sorry. I really am. Danny makes a small sound in the corner. He's the only one who believes me already. The money cleared. I know because Danny checked his phone at 12:03 a.m., and the blood left his face the way water leaves a bathtub. Fast, leaving nothing behind. He showed the notification to Marcus without speaking. Marcus stared at it, put the phone in his pocket, and walked into the other room without a word. The money clearing should have been the uncomplicated good news. 2 million transferred inside 4 minutes. No negotiation, no police involvement. In a normal abduction, if such a thing exists. This is the part where relief starts to move through the room. The worst scenario is off the table. The exit is forming. What Danny's face said instead was, it's real. All of it. Whatever that voice was, it's real, and it paid, and now it's coming. Cole took the shift of watching me at 2 a.m. He wasn't frightened, or he was frightened and had arranged his face so thoroughly against it that the arrangement had become its own thing, a performance of fearlessness that required constant maintenance. He paced. He checked the door. He looked at me with the assessing eyes of a man deciding how much use I was. Comfortable, he said at one point. Not particularly, I said. Good. He said it like it meant something. I looked at him. Really looked, the way Silas taught me, the way that finds the thing underneath the surface thing. And I found a man who had learned very early that the world responded to force and had spent his entire life refining that lesson. He wasn't cruel for cruelty's sake. He was cruel because cruelty had been the most reliable tool available to him. There's a tragedy in that. I recognized it without being moved by it, which is a thing that 4 years with Silas has done to my capacity for sympathy. Refined it, sharpened it, made it more precise. I care about Cole the way I'd care about a trap set in the woods, with respect for its construction and a wish that it hadn't been necessary. He took the pipe on my left wrist and tightened it. Just enough. I didn't react. He left. Then he came at 3 a.m. He brought water and something wrapped in foil. A sandwich, gas station probably, the bread slightly compressed. He set it down and then crouched in front of me. And he had the face of someone who wanted to apologize and was trying to figure out how to do it without sounding like he was backing out. You should eat, he said. Thank you. He watched me work the sandwich with my hands constrained and didn't offer to help, but didn't leave either. He was 22. I'd adjusted my estimate down. His hands had ink on the fingers, and his shoes were wrong for this kind of work, too clean. And he kept doing a thing with his jaw, like he was chewing on a thought he hadn't committed to swallowing. The call earlier, he said. Who was? I mean, how did he know Marcus's name? I thought about how to answer this. Not because I wanted to protect Silas's nature. That ship has, historically speaking, sailed, but because there's an order to understanding things like what my husband is. And if you give people the headline without the context, they hear it wrong. Have you ever heard of something that's so old, I said, that it's learned to read the world differently than we do? Not better, not worse, differently. Like you and I look at a room and we see objects, furniture, walls. He looks at the same room and sees everything that's happened in it. Every vibration, every presence. I paused. He read something in the sound of this call. The echo of the space, the acoustics, something I wouldn't even know to look for. He probably had the building before you disconnected. Danny was quiet. He's not human, he said. Not a question. No. What is he? I looked at my hands. The left wrist was sore where Cole had tightened the tie. The honest answer is complicated. The simple answer is something very old that decided, for years ago, that I was the thing it wanted to spend the next several centuries watching over. I paused. And I should tell you, that's not a metaphor. Centuries is literal. Danny sat back on his heels. He was processing. I gave him room for it. How did you? He stopped, started again. How did you end up married to something like that? And that? That is a question I've been asked before, by people who have context, who know the shape of the answer before they ask it. But Danny asked it the way young people ask things they genuinely need to know, with the hunger of someone trying to map something that doesn't fit any map they have. So I told him, not everything, but enough. I told him about Edinburgh, about the research trip that became something else, about a door I opened because I was 26 and reckless and too academic to recognize danger when it stood in front of me, with silver eyes and a coat that cost more than my annual stipend. I told him about Silas across a room full of people, how everyone else in that room moved around him the way water moves around something fixed, unconsciously, without understanding why. I told him about the conversation that lasted until dawn, about learning something impossible in increments, about the exact moment when I understood what I was sitting across from and chose, consciously and deliberately, to stay. Why? Denny asked. The way that word gets asked when it's the only word left. Because, I said, and I found the truest version of it, the one I keep for myself and rarely say aloud. He looked at me like I was a discovery. 600 years of existing in the world, and I was something he hadn't encountered before. Not my face, not anything external. Me. The way I think, the way I argue. I had to stop for a moment. This particular memory still does something to my rib cage. He said he'd spent centuries watching humans love things, and he'd never once wanted to do it himself. And then he met me, and he wanted it so badly it frightened him. And he told me that. Flat out. No performance. Danny was very still. We were together for 6 months before he told me everything. I said. And then he told me, and I had a week to decide what to do with it. And at the end of the week, I went back and I said, I'm not leaving. And he said, I know. I would have found a way to let you if you tried. I looked at Danny steadily. That's who you called. That's whose husband you're holding. Danny's throat moved. You should run, I told him. Not as a threat. As genuinely. Whatever Marcus is paying you, whatever you needed this for, go tonight. Don't tell the others you're leaving. Just go. Danny looked at me for a long time. I can't, he said. I know. I said it gently. I know you can't. He left with the foil from the sandwich. And I sat with my sore wrist and my memories and a distant, growing certainty in my chest that was not fear. That was something else. Something that felt, shamefully, like being known. Morning came through a gap in the corrugated roof, thin and gray and industrial. I had slept in pieces, the kind of sleep that isn't really rest, but is the body doing its minimum maintenance. I woke each time to the same room, the same pipe, the quiet sound of men who hadn't slept much either. By 6 a.m., the warehouse had the particular exhausted energy of a place where people are trying to pretend a night hasn't happened. Marcus had made calls I wasn't privy to. I could hear his voice through the wall, low, controlled, the tone of a man maintaining a version of events for someone on the other end who doesn't have full information. Keeping appearances up, deciding that the money clearing meant the situation was still manageable. The money cleared. He keeps coming back to that. I can see it in the set of his shoulders every time he moves through the room. The money cleared. Therefore this is working. Therefore the normal rules apply. Humans are remarkable at retrofitting narrative, at finding the evidence that confirms the story they need to be true. Tom brought me coffee at 8 a.m. He was the fifth one, the one I'd only heard through the wall. Bigger than the others, with a quietness that wasn't the watcher's strategic stillness, but something more like removal. Like Tom had learned to take up less space as a survival mechanism and had been doing it for so long that it had become structural. Accept the coffee down without looking at me and was almost back to the door when I said, "Thank you." He paused, didn't turn around, nodded once, very small, and left. I drank the coffee and thought about Silas. Here's the thing about being married to something ancient. You develop a sensitivity to it, not a supernatural one. I've asked, and Silas has confirmed that I have no particular gifts in that direction. Just the ordinary sensitivity that comes from proximity. The way you learn the rhythms of a person and begin to read their absence the way you read their presence. 10:14 a.m. I felt it. Not a sound, not a sensation exactly. More like the air in the room made a small adjustment, a recalibration. The way a compass needle shifts when it comes within range of the thing it's been designed to find. Something in my chest said north. Said there. He was somewhere in the city, not close, not yet, but moving. I sat with this knowledge the way you sit with something warm, carefully, trying not to disturb it. Cole came in at noon and tested me. Tested is the word I use, because that's what it was, systematic. He didn't need anything from me practically. He stood in front of me and made himself large and said the things that men like Cole say when they want to establish something. To find the limit of where you end and fear begins. I looked at him the whole time. Didn't look away. Didn't perform calm, because performance implies you have something to hide, and I don't have anything to hide from Cole's category of threat. He took my left arm and bent the wrist back. Not far, just to the edge of discomfort. "Where's your husband coming from?" he said. "He moves where he wants to move," I said. "That's not evasion. I genuinely don't track him. What does he actually do? Who does he work for?" "He works for no one." I held his gaze. "He is no one. Nothing. That's the part you're not grasping yet." He let go of my wrist. He was trying to decide if I was performing confidence or possessed of something real, and the not knowing was making him mean. I recognized the mechanism. "You're not as calm as you're pretending," he said. "I'm not pretending," I said. "I'm afraid of very specific things. This isn't one of them." "What are you afraid of?" "Loving something I can't protect." The possibility that Silas will not stop when I ask him to stop. The version of the story where everyone walks out breathing and I somehow failed to make it happen myself. Sometimes the parts of me that have changed in proximity to him, that feel his approach the way a satellite feels gravitational pull, that are glad in a complicated, animal way that he's coming. Myself, mostly. I didn't say any of that. I just looked at him until he left. At 2 p.m., Tom went to check the perimeter. He didn't come back. We all waited. 10 minutes. 15. Marcus went to the door, opened it, looked out into the afternoon gray, called Tom's name twice. Nothing. No answer. No sound. The city outside did its usual indifferent business. Marcus came back in. His face had gone very professional. The mask of a man who has decided not to react until he has more data. The four of them exchanged a look. And that look was the beginning of understanding. The first crack in the framework that said this is a manageable situation. I sat with my back against the pipe. One, I thought. They argued, of course. That's what people do when the script they've been working from develops its first irrecoverable deviation. They hold a council. They raise their voices at each other. Because raising your voices at each other is easier than sitting with the thing that's actually happening. Which is, Tom walked out a door and did not walk back. And it was silent. And silence is somehow worse than a scream. I watched them from my pipe. Ryan, the quiet one, spoke first. "We release him. Flat. Practical. We've got the money. Whatever's happening outside, we cut our losses and we walk." "We can't," Marcus said. "If we release him, and then if there's something wrong." "Something's already wrong," Ryan said. "Tom. We don't know what happened to Tom. He didn't come back." Cole cut across both of them. He had the energy of a man who handles fear by converting it entirely to forward motion. "We use him. If someone's outside, We use him as cover and we move. All of us together. Right now. City center, Marcus said. Too many witnesses. That draws exactly the attention we can't afford. I'll let them go. I had things to think about. The first, I did not want any of these men dead. I want to be precise about this, because it's important to me. It mattered then, and it matters to me now as I look back on it. These men were not abstractions. Marcus, with his script and his notepad, trying to hold the plan together with organizational discipline. Danny, who brought me a sandwich and listened to me talk about my husband with the open attention of someone genuinely trying to understand. Cole, who had been taught the world's worst lessons too early and built himself around them. Ryan, who read situations with quiet intelligence and had already identified the correct exit. Tom, whose quiet I understood only in retrospect as the quiet of a man already afraid. Before any of this began, they grabbed me because they needed something they couldn't get any other way. The arithmetic of desperation. I'm not naive about that. I have no illusions about having been grabbed gently or with consideration for my dignity. But I have always been, the person who stands between Silas and the worst version of any situation. He would call it unnecessary. He would say these men made their choices. And he would say it with that careful gentleness that means I will defer to you on this because you asked me to, but do not make the mistake of thinking I agree. And I would say please. Because I know what his please cost him, and I know what mine cost me, and I know that between the two of us, this is how we work. So I did not want any of them dead. What I felt, sitting against that pipe with the 4 remaining men fracturing in front of me, was the specific urgency of a person with limited time trying to communicate something through insufficient channels. Listen to me, I said. They ignored me. Listen to me. Marcus turned. The others followed. I had their attention. The way you get attention in a room that's already afraid is by being the stillest thing in it. I've been trying to find the right way to say this since yesterday, I said. I don't have diplomatic language for it anymore. So, what happened to Tom is a preview, not a threat. I am not threatening you. I have no leverage, and I know that. But whatever you think you're managing right now, you are not managing it. There is no scenario in which holding me here until tomorrow becomes okay. The only scenario that ends well for any of you is one where I walk out that door in the next 10 minutes. Silence. How? Ryan asked. Not why. Now what are you talking about? Just how. The intelligence I'd read in him, functional and unsentimental. You let me call him, I said. You let me tell him I'm walking out. He'll stop. Will he? Cole said, with the voice of a man who had decided I was lying. And here's the truth. I didn't know. Not with certainty. I knew Silas's will. The core of him. The part that defers to me. That has chosen to build something collaborative with me rather than simply have me the way he could have. The way centuries of existing without accountability might have made easier. But I also knew what he looked like when something touched what was his. The very first time, in our second year, a man at a restaurant who kept his hand on my arm 1 beat too long, who didn't respond to the first 2 requests to stop. Silas had looked at that man with an expression that I had not seen before and haven't forgotten since. Nothing happened. I said Silas's name, and he moved his attention to me like a light swinging on a pivot. But Tom was gone, and there are things I can ask of Silas, and there are things that operate below the level of asking. He'll stop, I said. If I ask him. I believed it. I had to believe it, because the alternative was sitting here cataloging the ways I'd failed. Marcus and Ryan exchanged a look. Ryan gave a small nod that said it's worth considering. Marcus's mouth pressed flat, which said I don't know how to incorporate this information. Cole opened his mouth. The lights went out. All of them together. No a flicker, just light, and then not. The generator or the main cut from outside, clean. The kind of darkness that a warehouse produces is not the gentle darkness of a room with curtains. It is an absence. It goes in all directions. My eyes tried to adjust, and found very little to work with. In the silence that followed, I heard a sound from the east side of the building. I know that sound, the way I know a handful of other sounds in this world, specifically, viscerally, by what it means rather than what it is. It's not a loud sound. It never is. I close my eyes, open them. The dark was the same. The generator came back after 11 minutes. 11 minutes of dark. And when the lights returned, Ryan was gone. No one had heard anything. No one had been more than 20 feet from him. He had been standing at the door for the corridor, and then the lights came on, and the door was open, and Ryan was not in front of it. Cole put the gun to my head at 4:33 p.m. He did it the way he did everything, with the efficiency of a man who has already decided that hesitation is the enemy of outcome. He came across the room while Marcus was still processing Ryan's absence, and he put the barrel against my temple, and he looked at Marcus and said, "He stays against the wall. Nobody moves. If whatever is outside wants him, it deals with us first." Marcus said, "Cole, this is the plan." I sat with the gun at my temple and felt the cold metal circle of it against my skin and thought, this is almost funny. Not because I'm brave, not because pain doesn't frighten me or death doesn't frighten me in the abstract, but because the gun is premised on a logic that assumes my continued existence is something that requires its protection. And Silas would burn the world down before he'd let the wrong person pull that trigger. Which means the gun is irrelevant. Which means I am, in some terrible way, the safest person in this building. But that thought opens onto something harder. The thought I've been sitting with since the lights went out. What does it mean to feel safe because you belong to something monstrous? For years of choosing, of the daily, renewed commitment to someone who is what? Extraordinary, terrifying mind, a being that contains multitudes I cannot fully understand. 6 centuries of experience and accumulation and loss, who has collapsed all of that to a single point, and the point is me. And sometimes the weight of being someone's single point of care is the most tremendous thing in the world. I have never thought of Silas as my protector. That's not the word. He is not a guardian in the way that word implies a hierarchy. I have always thought of us as a partnership between mismatched things that found, and probably, that their mismatch was fit. He has things I lack. I have things he has lost. The exchange has been, but Tom is gone, Ryan is gone, and Silas is somewhere in the building's radius, doing the thing that his nature requires of him when what he loves has been touched. And I'm sitting with a gun at my temple, feeling safe. And the safety itself is the thing that troubles me. Is that love? I don't mean does he love me. I know he loves me, with the absolute certainty of a thing I have verified repeatedly across 4 years. I mean, is this what love is allowed to look like? This is the shape of being known and claimed and kept. This is the shadow of being someone's choosing. I think about Silas in the early months, calibrating himself constantly, afraid of his own edges, watching me the way you'd watch something irreplaceable balanced on a high surface. He said once, in the 2nd year, late at night, in that particular darkness that strips the performance out of both of us, I've spent 6 centuries not wanting anything, and now I want everything, and I don't know how not to be terrible about it. And I put my hand on his chest, over a heart that beats slower than mine but steadier, and I said, "You practice, like everyone else." And he looked at me like I'd said something revolutionary. He is practicing. Even now, whatever he's doing in the dock of this building, he is trying to practice. Marcus made the call at 5 p.m. His hands were shaking in a way he was trying to contain. He had the burner phone and the number and the specific terrified clarity of a man who has exhausted every other option and has arrived at the only door left. It rang once. Marcus. Silas's voice. Marcus's composure cracked, just at the edges. "We have him. I have him. He's with me right now. We can resolve this. We can. I understand." Silas's voice was different than it had been last night. Last night it was controlled, subterranean, a thing barely in check. Now it was something else. It was quiet. The quiet of something that has passed through the part where containment matters. I'm going to ask you something, Marcus. And I want you to understand that your answer is the most important thing you've said today. Has anyone heard him? Not frightened. Not inconvenienced. Heard. Marcus looked at me. Really looked. Cole's hand tightened on the gun. Marcus looked at the gun. I saw him do the math that said, if I tell the truth, this ends one way. If I lie, it ends another. No, Marcus said. No. No. A pause. Then you have 30 seconds to release him, Silas said. After 30 seconds, I stopped being patient. Wait, if you just. The line was quiet. Not closed. Open. Listening. 30 seconds. In the room, nobody moved. Cole had the gun. Marcus had the phone. Danny was against the far wall, making himself small. And I was watching all of them and thinking, please not. Not at anyone in the room. Just into the air. Into the connection that 4 years of proximity to something ancient had built between my nervous system and his. Please don't make me ask you to stop. Don't make me be the person who has to ask you to stop. The 30 seconds passed. Something hit the door. He doesn't knock. Silas doesn't knock. He never has. I've teased him about this. I've explained the social contract of knocking and its role in maintaining civil relations between humans. And he has looked at me with those silver eyes and said, you never knock at my door. And I have said, that's because you tell me not to. And he has said, yes. And that's the entire argument. The door doesn't splinter. It doesn't explode inward the way doors do in films. It simply opens. The way a door opens when the thing on the other side of it has decided the door is a formality, and formalities are for circumstances that still have rules. Silas stands in the frame. I want to tell you what he looks like, and I want to be honest about what I'm working with, which is, I am not capable of objective description. I never have been. The first time I saw him across a room in Edinburgh, I thought that's the most alive-sounding thing I've ever encountered. And 4 years later, I still cannot look at him the way you look at something neutral. He is 6 feet of something that wears the appearance of a man the way water wears the shape of a vessel. Convincingly, completely, but always with the knowledge that the vessel is not the thing. He has been in this building for I don't know how long. Long enough that his coat is darker on the cuffs than it was when we said goodbye 2 days ago. He is looking at the room the way he always looks at rooms. The way that finds the architecture and the history and all the vectors simultaneously. And then his eyes find me. And the room stops. Not metaphorically. Every person in that room stops. Marcus with his phone, Cole with his gun, Danny against the wall. The energy in this space changes. The way air pressure changes before a storm, that particular dense quality, and all of it, is focused on Silas standing in the doorway. Not moving. Because he's looking at me, and I'm looking at him. And for about 4 seconds we're just that. 2 people across a room from each other, taking inventory. His chest moves. 1 breath. Mine answers it. Cole moves. I hear the gun before I see it. The specific mechanical sound of intention. And what happens next happens faster than I can track. I have seen Silas move quickly before. I have never been able to describe it to anyone's satisfaction, because human language doesn't have the architecture for it. He is at the door, and then he is not at the door. Marcus is against the wall, and the gun is not in Cole's hand, and Cole is on the floor, and I'm not sure in what order those things happened. He doesn't kill them. I'm watching him, and he doesn't kill them. Marcus is against the wall and breathing. Cole is on the floor and breathing. Danny, who never moved, is pressed into the corner and breathing. Silas is standing in the center of the room, and he is shaking. I've seen this 3 times in 4 years. The shaking is not rage. It's not the excess of violence with nowhere to go. It's the other thing, the thing underneath the violence. The shaking of something that has been running on pure chemical urgency for however long it's been since he felt the absence of me, through whatever sense he uses to track me. However many hours since the compass needle in his chest swung and found nothing. He crosses the room. He doesn't run. He walks. Every step is deliberate. In the way that things are deliberate when deliberation is the only thing holding the shape of the moment together. He crouches in front of me. He puts his hands on either side of my face. Are you hurt? And it's not the voice from the phone. Not the architectural thing, the controlled and terrible thing. It's him, the version I sleep next to, the version that reads next to me by the window at 4 a.m. and forgets to track time. The voice that said I don't know how not to be terrible about it in the dark, terrified of itself. I'm fine, I say. My wrist is sore. I'm fine. His thumbs move against my jaw. His eyes are doing the inventory. Every surface, every shadow, looking for damage with the intensity of someone checking structural integrity after an earthquake. Silas, I say. Don't kill them. The room does something. Not a sound, more like a pressure shift. His eyes move from my face to the room and back to my face. I watch the calculation happening. Watch him weighing something I can't fully see the shape of against the fact of my asking. This is the 30 seconds again, but reversed. This is his 30 seconds. All right, he says quietly, like a door closing on something. He pulls the zip ties apart with his hands. Not dramatically, just efficiently, the way you remove something that's in the way. My wrists are free. He checks the left one, the sore one, with a careful attention that makes something in my chest do a complicated thing. Can you stand? Yes. He stands first, then offers his hand. I take it. He pulls me up with the particular care of someone who is afraid of using too much and always will be. We walk to the door. Behind us, Marcus and Cole and Danny are alive and on the floor, and I'm sure that's going to be a complicated situation later. But Silas said all right, and all right means all right. At the door I stopped. I look back at Danny. Danny, who brought me a sandwich and asked me why. When this is over, I tell him, go. He nods. Small. Very small. I walk out with my husband's hand in mine. The car is a black thing parked 2 streets away that I've never seen before and probably don't want to know the provenance of. Silas opens the passenger door, and I get in, and he gets in, and neither of us speaks for about 3 minutes while the city does its evening business around the windows. Then he says, "You're angry." I'm not angry. You're something. I'm something. I agree. He doesn't push. This is one of the things I've learned about him across 4 years. He asks, he offers room, and then he waits. 600 years has made him very good at waiting. It used to frustrate me. Now I understand it as a kind of structural courtesy, the patience of a thing that knows it could simply have the answer and is choosing not to. 2 people are dead. I say, yes. I didn't want that. I know. No defense. No negotiation. Just I know. The acknowledgement sitting flat between us. I told them. I say, and here's the thing I haven't said to anyone, the thing I've been holding since the lights went out. I told them, Silas. I told them to Ron. I told Danny specifically. They didn't listen. And I understand that people don't listen, but I was there, and I was telling them, and they still. I stop. He has turned to face me. In the evening light through the car windows, he looks not human exactly, but human-shaped in a way that my brain has learned to translate as home. The silver of his eyes is very steady. What are you actually saying? He says. I look at my hands. The left wrist has a red mark from the tie. I don't know what to do. I say slowly. With the part of myself that was relieved when you came through that door. That's been bothering me since Tom went quiet. I felt you coming, and the feeling was I was glad. And 2 people are dead, and I was glad. Silence. Being glad I came isn't the same as being glad for the deaths, he says. I know that. Do you? Yes. But they're attached, Silas. They're attached. Because the only reason I needed you to come was, and the only way you came was, I stop. Try again. You are what you are, and I love you. And sometimes those 2 things sit next to each other. and I don't know what to do with how well they fit. He is quiet for a long time. Then, I was afraid. I look at him. In 4 years, he has used that word in connection with himself exactly 3 times. I know all 3 occasions. I keep them somewhere careful. When I understood you'd been taken, he says, before I started moving, there were approximately 11 seconds where I couldn't. He looks at his own hands, which I find remarkable. Silas never looks at his own hands. I have not experienced 11 seconds like that in a very long time. What changed? After the 11 seconds, I started moving, he says simply, because the alternative was staying still. I think about that. I don't want you to be something else. I say, I want to be clear about that. I'm not sitting here wishing you were different. I'm just trying to hold it. All of it. The part that loves you, and the part that knows what loving you means, and the part that keeps choosing it anyway. And he says, and I keep choosing it. That's not in question. He reaches across the space between us and takes my sore wrist very gently. He turns it in his hands and looks at the red mark and does something, runs his thumb across it slowly, and the soreness diminishes. I've never asked him how. I've accepted it the way I've accepted a lot of things, as a feature of the particular world I live in now. Marcus and the others, he says, they'll be remanded. I have arrangements. They won't come near you again. I know. I trust your arrangements. Danny, he says, and there's something in the way he says it. Something careful. You told him to go. He was the youngest. He was scared before any of it started. A pause. He reminded me, Silas says, of you. When I first met you. The specific quality of being afraid and too curious to leave anyway. I feel something move through my chest. You're not going to. No, he says immediately. I'm not. He's going. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Silas starts the car. Outside, the city continues its indifferent night. He drives with one hand, the other holding mine on the center console, his thumb moving in the specific slow pattern that I don't think he knows he does. The small, repetitive gesture of reassurance that he performs without being asked, without performance. I watch the city go by. I think, this is what it looks like. This is the actual thing. Not the drama of the door, not the control of the phone call. This, the drive home, the thumb on my hand, the way he said afraid and meant it. This is what I keep choosing. This particular, impossible, ongoing thing. We don't talk about it for 3 days. Not because we're avoiding it. Silas and I have never been good at avoidance. The combination of his directness and my stubbornness tends to bring things to the surface whether we want them there or not. We don't talk about it because we are tired. There is a specific exhaustion that follows the end of something dangerous, and it is not like ordinary tiredness. It lives in different parts of the body. It requires different kinds of rest. He runs me a bath on the first night. This is not a thing Silas does casually. He doesn't do anything casually. Domesticity especially costs him something. I think, some residual conviction that he shouldn't be the kind of thing that runs baths. That softness is a declension. He does it anyway. He has always done it anyway. I sleep for 11 hours and wake to find him in the chair by the window. He sleeps, Silas, but not the way I do. Not the long, dark unconsciousness of humans. He rests, sits still in the dark and rests. And sometimes, in the very early morning, I've woken to find him watching me sleep, and when I catch him at it he doesn't look away, which is the most him thing about him. The refusal to be embarrassed by his own caring. On the second day, I let Silas work. He has enterprises, investments, administrative structures built across centuries that require attention even when the world is falling apart. We exist in the same space and don't perform for each other, which is what 4 years looks like when it's working. On the third day, Denny calls. I gave him my number, not while I was chained to the pipe, but afterward, somehow through Silas's arrangements, which I have long since stopped asking for the mechanics of. He calls, and I answer, and he says, I just wanted, I don't know, I wanted to say thank you. For the sandwich thing? For the sandwich. For both things. A pause. I'm going. Like you said, I'm going. Good, I say. Go far. Is he, will he? You're safe, I say. I promise. After I hang up, I sit on the kitchen floor with my back against the cabinets, which is a thing I do sometimes. The floor being grounding in the literal and practical sense, and I think about Danny and the specific mercy of escape, of walking away from something before it closes. I did not walk away. I'm thinking about why. Not because I need to interrogate it. I've made my peace with the choice. But because the abduction, for all its horror, did something that 4 years of daily life hadn't done. It put the choice under pressure, tested the weld, and I found, in the testing, that I'm not here by inertia. I'm not here because leaving is difficult or because the alternative is frightening. I'm here because when I felt Silas moving toward me across the city, the word my body used for it was home. That's a choice. Keeps being a choice. Silas finds me on the floor. He doesn't comment on the floor. He sits down next to me, back against the opposite cabinet, and we're facing each other in the narrow kitchen with our knees almost touching. Tell me something. I say, anything. The 11 seconds. When you couldn't move. What were you thinking? He looks at me for a long time. Not evasively. Silas is not an evasive person. He's just finding the right architecture for it. That I had built something, he says finally, over 4 years. Something I'd never had before. And that it had been. Taken is too small a word. Interrupted. And I thought, if this is the moment where I learn that nothing is permanent. He stops. And then I thought you would tell me to move. And so I moved. Something in my chest pulls tight and then releases. I would tell you to move. I confirm. I know. He says it simply. That's why. We sit for a while on the kitchen floor. Outside the window, the city is doing its late afternoon thing, the specific gold of it coming through at an angle. I watch it move across the tile. I've been thinking, I say, about what it means to belong to something that operates outside of normal limits. And I think I've decided that it doesn't mean what I was afraid it meant. What were you afraid it meant? That my safety comes at the cost of my agency. That being loved that specifically means I'm kept rather than chosen. I look at him. But that's not what it is. No. You stopped, I say, when I asked you to stop. Yes. That's the whole argument. That's every version of this conversation I come back to. You stopped. He is quiet for a moment. Then, you asked. How could I? I have wanted many things across a very long time, and I have taken many of them, in ways I'm not entirely reconciled to. But I have never wanted anything the way I want you to be happy. And you to be happy, and I do whatever I want regardless of your asking, are not compatible wishes. So I stopped. I look at him. Really look. The way I've been looking at him since Edinburgh. The way that keeps finding new things even after 4 years. The careful hands. The silver eyes that are watching me with the patient intensity of something that has decided I am worth watching indefinitely. Do you know what I thought? I say, when you came through that door. Tell me. I thought, there he is. I smile. I feel it happen before I decide on it. I thought, there's the lunatic I married. And I was glad. Just glad. The way you're glad when something difficult is resolved, and the resolution, it's the right shape. He reaches out and tucks a piece of hair back from my face. I thought, he's breathing, Silas says. Just that. Everything else was secondary. We stay on the floor for a while longer. There's no urgency. There's dinner to think about, and tomorrow to think about, and the ongoing administrative reality of being married to someone who has centuries of accumulated logistics to manage. There's the mundane structure of a shared life. But for now, the kitchen floor, the gold light, his knee touching mine. Much later, after dinner, after the long conversation that wanders from Edinburgh to the warehouse to the theoretical question of whether we need a vacation somewhere without extradition treaties, Silas says he doesn't vacation. I say he does now. Later, I am almost asleep. And I do the thing I've been doing for 4 years, when I want to catch him at it. I slow my breathing. I make myself still. I pretend. I feel him in the chair before I hear him move to it. The specific quality of his attention, the way it has a texture, the way it lands on me like something warm and very old settling into place. In the almost dark, with the city murmuring outside and the whole complicated shape of us arranged around this quiet room, I think, there you are. There you are watching me sleep. Reliably present, 600 years and counting, and still not bored of this particular view. You maniac. You absolute, terrifying mind. I feel him still. He knows I'm awake. He always knows. Julian, he says quietly. Yes. Stop pretending. I'm not pretending, I say. A pause. Then the warmth of him sitting on the edge of the bed, one hand curved around my shoulder. Liar, he says. But it sounds like I see you. Sounds like I always see you. I open my eyes. He's looking at me with that expression, the one I don't have a word for, the one that showed up sometime in our first year and has been there ever since. The one that is not possessiveness and is not adoration and is not simply love, but is some composite of all three that only exists in him, that only appears when the object is me. Hi, I say. Hi, he says. We look at each other in the dark, and I choose him, like I always do, like I keep doing, the whole complicated, terrifying, extraordinary thing. Again, we did not speak of the warehouse again for several weeks. Not because we were avoiding it, Silas and I have never been good at avoidance, but because the shape of the experience had settled into us the way sediment settles in still water, and there was nothing left to say that the silence wasn't already saying. He watched me differently now. Not with suspicion, not with the searching intensity of those first months when he was still calibrating the distance between what he was and what he wanted to be. This was something else. This was the attention of someone who had almost lost something and was still, weeks later, confirming that it remained. I caught him at it constantly. In the kitchen, while I made coffee. In the study, while I read. In bed, at 3 a.m., when he thought I was asleep. And when I caught him, he didn't look away. He just looked. You're doing it again, I said one evening, not looking up from my book. Doing what? The thing where you watch me like I'm going to evaporate. He was quiet for a moment. Then, you almost did. I set the book down. I was in a warehouse for less than 24 hours. I had a sore wrist. I was never in any real danger. You were in danger the moment they touched you. His voice was flat, the way it got when he was stating something he considered self-evident. The fact that the danger did not manifest does not mean it was not present. I looked at him. He was sitting in the chair by the window, the evening light silvering the edges of his hair. 600 years, and he still hadn't learned that the world did not revolve around the catastrophe that might happen. Or perhaps he had learned it, and the learning had made him worse, not better. You can't protect me from everything, I said. I can try. That's not the same thing. He held my gaze. No, he agreed. It isn't. Danny called again, 3 weeks after the abduction. This time, he sounded different. Not scared, exactly, but settled. The way people sound when they've made a decision and are already living inside its consequences. I'm in Montana, he said. I got a job at a garage. It's not much, but it's mine. That's good, I said. I just wanted to, I don't know. I wanted to say thank you again. And I wanted to ask, he hesitated. Does it get easier? The being afraid part. I thought about that. I thought about Silas in the early years, the way I had flinched at every sudden noise, every unexpected touch. I thought about the slow, incremental process of learning that the person beside you was not going to hurt you, even though he could, even though the capacity for it was woven into the fabric of what he was. No, I said honestly. But you get better at carrying it. Danny was quiet for a moment. Then, that's not very comforting. No, I agreed. But it's true. By the 5th week, The rhythm of our lives had returned to something like normal. Silas went back to his work, the endless administrative machinery of wealth that had accumulated across centuries. I went back to mine, the quiet, solitary labor of research and writing that had been my life before him and had somehow survived the transformation. We ate dinner together every night. We argued about the thermostat. We read in the same room, not speaking, not needing to, the ordinary architecture of a shared life. And at night, in the dark, we held each other the way people hold something they've learned to value through the experience of nearly losing it. "I'm not going anywhere," I said one night, when his arms tightened around me without warning. "I know. Then why are you holding me like I am?" He didn't answer immediately. Then, because knowing and feeling are different things. And I have had 600 years to learn that lesson. It has not gotten easier. I turned in his arms so I could see his face in the dim light. "You need to stop," I said gently, waiting for me to leave. His expression flickered. Something passed across it too fast to name. "I'm not waiting," he said. "You're braced. It's not the same, but it's adjacent." He didn't deny it. That was the thing about Silas. He never denied what was true. He just sat with it, the way you sit with something heavy, letting the weight of it settle where it would. "I married you," I said. "I chose you. I keep choosing you. That's not going to change because someone put a hood over my head and made a phone call." "That's not. I know that's not. It's not logical." "No," I agreed. "It's not. But you're not logical about this. You've never been logical about this." He was quiet for a long time. Then he pressed his forehead to mine. "I would burn the world down for you," he said quietly. "You know that." "I know. And that doesn't frighten you?" I thought about the warehouse, the lights going out, the silence where a man had been standing, the way I had felt in the moment Silas came through the door, not horror but relief. "It should," I said. "But mostly it just makes me feel safe. And I'm still trying to figure out what to do with that." He kissed me then, soft, slow, the way he kissed when he was trying to say something he didn't have words for. And when he pulled back, his eyes were very silver and very steady. "We have time," he said. "We have as much time as you want." I looked at him, this impossible, ancient, terrifying thing that had decided, for reasons I still didn't fully understand, that I was worth the effort of being gentle. "Good," I said, "because I'm not leaving." He smiled then, small, real, the kind of smile that only appeared in the dark, when the performance of being human fell away and left only the thing underneath. "I know," he said. And in the quiet of that room, with the city sleeping outside and the weight of 600 years pressed against my skin, I believed him.